this. Okay, got it. Great. Good evening and welcome to Advocacy 101 for local leagues. This program is being recorded and will be sent out to all registrants tomorrow with the slides. It'll also be available on the LWVMA website. My name is Kathy Leonardson, and I'm the chair of the Legislative Action Committee of the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts. I will moderate this evening. Other LAC members who I want to thank for work on this program are LAC Vice Chair Nancy Brumbeck, LAC Specialist Jen Muroff, Envoy Coordinator Mary Cummings, and LAC Specialist Lucy Costa. And I want to especially thank our featured speaker, Jessica Jones Chaparral from the National League, who I will introduce in just a moment. This evening, we will review how leagues at the local level can take action on local, state, and national issues as they come up for you. You will hear about the process you should use to decide when to act, if you should act, and where to go if you have questions. The agenda for this evening, if you can share that, Jan, I appreciate it. We'll begin with our featured speaker, Jessica Jones Chaparral, who will speak about advocacy at the federal level. And then we'll take questions right after her presentation. Next, we will go to the state and local advocacy presentation by our LAC members, Jen and Nancy. And then after both of those, we'll accept questions. Lucy and I will moderate the questions. All league action, as you know, is based on our positions. And our positions are arrived at after study and are contained in these documents. Impact on issues, which is the national positions. And then the next slide shows links to where you can go online to get impact on issues. Also where we stand, that's the LWVMA set of positions. Okay, I'd like to introduce Jessica, our special guest speaker, Jessica Jones Chaparral. Jessica is the Director of Governmental Affairs at the League of Women Voters of the United States. She manages relationships and strategic planning for federal legislation and lobbying. Jessica advises and assists with aligning advocacy and legislative priorities at all levels of the League of Women Voters. She also manages the day-to-day operations of the League's Volunteer Lobby Corps. With a decade of experience at the organization, she's become an expert on league policy positions. In her free time, Jessica enjoys watching baseball and the WNBA, learning about wine, watching her son learn new things. She resides in Washington, D.C. with her husband, son, and their dog, Lily. Welcome, Jessica. We're really thrilled to have you this evening.
Thank you so much, Kathy, and thank you so much for having me as part of the conversation tonight. I'm excited to talk with you all. I recognize some familiar faces and some familiar names. So thanks so much for taking in a little bit of time to invite me to be here today. I'm going to talk a little bit about taking action at the federal level. And I know there was a lot of questions, and I want to preface by saying there seems like there's a lot of rules around how to take action at the national level or at the federal level with federal lawmakers or administrative officials. But I want you to know that our philosophy is to always try to find a way to say yes. Whenever requests come in, we very carefully consider the issue, very carefully consider the request and other things that are going on Capitol Hill or within the administration, and we always try to find a way to say yes. So that I want you to know we come from a positive place when we're all working together. I'm actually, throughout our conversation tonight, going to drop some links into the chat for some of the things that I reference, and then I'll make sure that folks have those afterwards so you can send them out in any follow-up resources if you'd like to do that. You've already heard a little bit about the impact on issues, and some of the things I'm going to talk about, maybe actually all of the things I'm going to talk about, are highlighted in the very front section of this book. It's a section called Taking Action, where LWVS outlines ways that state, local, and the National League can all work together to influence public policy. The processes and kind of guidelines are set out in large part to make sure that the League is always speaking with one voice, and that we have a consistent messaging across all levels of League when we're talking to federal lawmakers. It's one of the most important tenets of the League, and of course the National League is responsible for determining strategies and action policies that ensure the League's message on national issues is consistent across the country. So that's why we ask you to reach out to us when you want to touch base with your senators, with your representatives, or if you want to talk to the administration on something. So how is advocacy at the national level? So how do we establish national priorities? There's a number of different ways that we do this, or a number of different things that not a number of different ways we do it, but a number of different things we consider when establishing national priorities, and particularly legislative priorities to help guide our work in Congress. The legislative priorities are adopted by the LWVUS board every calendar year, and they adopt them with input from staff and considerations of the political climate in which we live. Then, so at the January board meeting is when the LWVUS board would take a recommendation, they edit it, they discuss it, and then they would move it. And that's what our legislative priorities are set for the calendar year. And we do that every January. The goal is to maintain focus on issues of primary importance identified at the national level. We like to make sure there's a lot of different considerations. First, making sure that we are projecting a focused and consistent message on League issues across the country, and especially at the federal level. We want to make sure that what we work on also enhances the League's effectiveness, and that we can have a deep impact on the issues in which we wish to lobby. We also use these issues to help build the League's credibility and our visibility, not just on Capitol Hill, but with other policymakers and other organizations at the national level as well. We also want to make sure that we have significant and sufficient issue and political expertise on a certain policy issue. That could mean that we have policy perspective or policy expertise on staff, but it could also mean that we know that we have member understanding and a strong membership expertise on the issue as well. Of course, our legislative priorities also reflect the program decisions that are made at convention, and they build on our strong member interest and support, and also enable the League to manage our resources effectively. I created today a page in large part due to our conversation tonight, but also because I get a lot of questions about what the League's legislative priorities are. So today I took some time and created a page where you can see where our legislative priorities are, or what they are for the calendar year, and that page will continue to live for years to come, and we'll update it every year when LWVS board adopts new legislative priorities. So great job, change already. Of course, LWVUS issues action alerts as legislation is moving, or as we want to get co-sponsors, or as we want bills to actually start to move in Congress. We issue action alerts to all of our members whom we have email addresses for, and also to our millions of supporters who might not be members but have an interest in the League. And we do that through our email, and then they're also available on our website. So anything that the League has issued an action alert on, you as a member should feel free to contact your member of Congress directly on that issue. First, respond to the action alert, please, and as an individual and as a league, if you're a league president or a spokesperson for your league, please make sure to identify yourself as so, and contact your members of Congress or your senators. So you can take action on a league issued action alert at any time. It's always a great idea to check in with us if we might have additional information if it's been a while since the action was issued. So just check in with us. We're happy to give you intel or let you know if something is stalled, or work with you to find out, to give you exactly the information that you want in order to make sure that your message is most well received. I'm about to drop in the chat the place where you can find all of our action alerts that have been issued. That's available on our website, lwv.org/takeaction. We also work with the LWVS Lobby Corps. Our Lobby Corps was just, in our office virtually last week. They're actually lobbying some members of Congress on climate change right now. But our Lobby Corps is made up of members from the Washington, D.C. area, so mostly D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. And we do have someone from West Virginia who's closer to the U.S. Capitol than she is to her own state capital, so she helps us out. And they lobby each month when Congress is in session. They lobby on a specific piece of legislation or a specific issue that the LWVUS staff has determined as important. So they don't lobby for like outside issues. We keep it very close, we keep it very tight, and very focused on specific issue areas derived out of our legislative priorities. And we give them a monthly briefing, and then they reach out to staff on Capitol Hill. They communicate that work back to state presidents and sometimes local presidents. And they're always looking for members who can help make an impact on the ground. And we'll be talking a little bit about around convention, a little bit more about how if there's an opportunity to engage with Lobby Corps. So look out for that. And if you aren't going to convention, I'm always also happy to plug you into that opportunity. So I think a lot of the confusion comes when we talk about state and local advocacy and lobbying on non-priority issues. So we have identified our priorities, but there could be something that's not included in the priorities. Our priorities currently include the Campaign for Making Democracy Work. And then there's a number of different issues on a watch list, which include the Equal Rights Amendment, includes climate change, healthcare, and immigration. But sometimes there are issues outside of those kind of areas where we're watching, or sometimes they're within those issues where you haven't seen us take action. So we request that you fill out the federal action request form, and I'm about to drop the link for that in there into the chat as well. Came prepared with receipts. And the federal action request form, again, it helps us to make sure that we're speaking with one voice across the entire league. There could be private conversations that we're having, or maybe there's a coalition letter that we have signed on to on a particular issue that hasn't been made public yet. So we ask that you reach out to us before you contact your member of Congress, or before you reach out to any administrative officials, just to make sure that we're speaking with one voice. We have a new staffer on my team. Her name is Kristen Kern. She's our federal advocacy and policy manager. She's been with the league for 5 weeks now. I threw her directly into the federal action request form pool, and she has been taking on answering those. I think you will find that she has probably answered about a dozen since she has been here, and I don't know that there's been one that we've said no to. We do request that you only contact them. Actually, it's a league policy that you only contact your members of Congress, so the members of Congress that represent you. So within Massachusetts, if you come to us with a letter that's for a specific committee chair or that's for leadership, we will usually say no because they do not represent you. But that also, we will say no to you, but that also, knowing that it's a priority for you, if we read the letter and we find that we decide it's a good letter, LWS may join it instead. So you still get some league action and you still get the league name on a particular issue. It just won't happen at the state or local level. And again, that's that's because we're trying to respect the boundaries of the league and respect the representation that other leagues have in their own communities. So that's why those rules are in place. But if you're ever contemplating federal action, whether it's legislation or maybe you want to contact the administrator of the EPA or we get a lot of requests for the Bureau of Land Management and for the Interior Department on different national parks or different land issues. Anything, please just reach out. Like I said, we always try to find a way to say yes. And we will work with you to find a solution so that your issue can be heard. I'm trying to think but the federal action request form has a number of questions. Clearly helps you make the best case for contacting your member of Congress on a particular issue. And we are pretty responsive. And if there's anything that we just don't quite understand, we'll always give you a phone call to find out how we can work together to figure this out. And we do try to turn those around in 48 hours. I am incredibly lucky to have this job and incredibly lucky to work with not only all of you, but all of our league members around the country. I love advocacy. I love talking with federal lawmakers. I love helping leagues figure out how we can best all work together, whether it's at the federal level, the state level, or the local level. So I'm always around. So please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. I'll drop my email into the chat. But I'm also happy to take your questions now. And I think I've covered all of the questions that you got in the beginning, Jen, and folks. But let me know what else I can help answer tonight.
Great. Well, thank you so much. So now we're ready for some questions. And I think Lucy's going to handle anything that comes in the chat. And I'm going to look for people that have raised their hands and we will convey those questions to Jessica. I see.
There is one question in the chat. Do you want to take that first, Kathy, or?
Go ahead. Yeah. And then we'll go to Palma, who has her hand up. I see.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So this is from Robin. It says that League of Women Voters was mentioned in the book Medicare for All, A Citizen's Guide by Drs. El Said and Johnson as one of the groups supporting Medicare for All. Can you comment on where the LWVUF stands now in support or opposition to what is in the Senate single payer bills, now HR 1976, soon to be a Senate bill introduced by Senator Sanders? Does National plan to act on its statement to comment on what is in these bills? That it's a pretty long question, so maybe you can just kind of share where National is at with that.
Sure, it's a great question. We haven't specifically endorsed a piece of legislation. We do have a position that supports a Medicare for All structure of healthcare. We have endorsed this piece of legislation in previous sessions of Congress. We have really been focused on working on the democracy legislation, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, the Freedom to Vote Act throughout the first year in Congress. Now that Congress is kind of moving away from that, we'll definitely take a look at this, but we haven't endorsed it yet. We do have a position that would support us moving forward with an endorsement. And there's going to be a proposed concurrence at convention that would strengthen our healthcare position even further. So for those of you who are going to a convention, make sure to take a look at that so you know what you're voting on. So the short answer is we haven't endorsed it yet, but that doesn't mean we won't endorse it in the future.
Great. Palma, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hi, I'm actually going to kind of, let me present the question. I'm going to present like an example that's actually a real world example. In terms of contacting your own representative or senator, well, senator's easy, it's statewide, but the representative is because, especially someplace like here in Massachusetts, we're very close and I have no idea where our redistricting is at this moment. I almost moved. So those are those. What about those adjacent issues within a state or something like that? Now I'm going to actually give you an example that actually is kind of coming up. Farm bill is coming up. Jim McGovern, who is out in Worcester, I'm in Boston, he's in Worcester, but he is also the chair of the, he's the chair with the agricultural subcommittee. He is, he's 2 districts away from mine. He also is founds up the Hunger Caucus. And so there's that. The state league is actually supporting things that actually get funded by the Farm Bill. In addition, we belong to a statewide coalition that works with FRAC on the national level. So my question is where does it come in where they're that close? Massachusetts is an interesting state in that so much of it is so close. But so my concept is, well, what if they are close, related? And I will actually tell you, Jim McGovern will show up in Boston asking for stories. So even though he's 2 districts away, he might show up at something saying, does anybody have any stories? So he's an easy one, but I'm just trying to give that as an example of not yours, but very close.
So Palma, can you explain what you'd actually be advocating for? Is it for the farm bill? Is that correct, that you'd be contacting McGovern around the farm bill? Is that the question?
Well, no, it's actually, the question actually is if the policy, the national policy is contact your own rep.
Correct.
My question becomes is where is the maybe wiggle room? Where is the policy when it comes to kind of what I would consider a gray area?
Okay.
And that's my example.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I'm trying to think through how best to answer the question. So first off, and I think this also answers another question that's in the chat. You as an individual can do whatever you want, right? I'm talking about what you can do with the league's name. Is my first question to you, Palma, in response to your question, is there another league that overlaps with that congressional district? If there is, I would say the best option is to coordinate with that local league and to make sure that they are on the same page with you and can join whatever advocacy that you want. That makes it stronger. If you come to me and you say, I want to talk, these 2 local leagues want to talk to this congressperson about the farm bill, then I know that there is strength behind this request. And it's, like I said, we always try to find a way to say yes. But I would have a very hard time saying no to that. I know it doesn't answer your question specifically. And I'm sorry, I'm not as familiar with the congressional districts in Massachusetts as I am.
This one is kind of, to be honest, Jim McGovern would be an easy one. You know, he really would be. But I know that there are other issues that are kind of environmental issues and medical issues, that type of thing that tend to. And I'll be honest, Jim McGovern would probably take a call from Texas on this issue. He's that guy.
Well, you're very lucky to have a member who would take a call from anyone in the country. They're very picky these days about who they talk to.
I think we need to move to the next question. Thank you. So I think we answered from the chat. Does this apply only if we act as representative of the league, which you just answered? Kathy, do you see any raised hands?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have a raised hand. Nancy Brumbeck.
Yes, a quick question, Jessica. We have one of our local leagues, their town has passed a thing to allow non-citizens to vote in town elections. And when I look at the US position on voting, it says rights of all citizens to vote. Can we support that, or is that up in the air, the idea of non-citizens in local elections, or does their policy specify it has to be citizens?
Our policy is very specific about it being citizens. I don't believe, and I've consulted with Selena Stewart, who some of you may know is the chief counsel and the senior director of advocacy and litigation. She's my boss. We've consulted with some other experts on league positions. I don't believe that the league nationally has ever considered voting for non-citizens, but that also doesn't mean that if you feel like you have a state or a local position that would cover that, and you have member understanding at the state and local level, then you could most certainly have a position that supports that. And there are many leagues across the country who do have that. And we're actually, I know there was a recent webinar earlier this week with some representatives, I think from, or not representatives, but like community members from Boston, from San Francisco, and another area that talked a little bit about this. So we'll be doing some additional research to find out where leagues have taken a position.
I think that's where the question came from, was that conference.
Yeah, it was a really great conference. A member of my team was able to join and brought back some really great notes for me to take a look through. So I would say there's not a national position on that. We don't feel like we have member understanding enough that we have studied it or considered it, but there are some state and local leagues that have considered it and that have supported it in their communities. And we'll be sharing some additional resources in the near future about the leagues that have done that.
Great, thank you. Lucy, do you have any other another question? Then I have a raised hand here. I don't hear from Lucy, so I'm going to call on.
There's a question about what the current Medicaid expansion position is. Would we just refer to the national policy document for that?
Yeah, the current LWVS healthcare position supports Medicare for all. And there's an additional proposal at convention to strengthen our healthcare position through a concurrence with the state of New York, their recent adoption of a expanded healthcare position.
Thank you. Okay, Robin Chen, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, thanks so much for calling on me. So my question is a little similar to Nancy Brombach's about the league policy position, or the league where we stand statement about the right of every citizen to vote, and about member understanding. So my number one issue is about voting age, and there is movement within this domain, and I've really felt like I'd like some guidance about how to work towards member understanding, because I believe it's really consistent with our values. And I just fail to find traction with people who can convene the right people to know, like learn, like connect with the expertise that I could put them in touch with very happily. And it's, again, sometimes I question, is this the right organization to be spending my time with? If I care about this issue, I really feel I can add value to the league by bringing in the knowledge and the outside connections I have to this issue. And so it's, again, like everybody in the room, please mentor me on how to bring this issue to the right attention of people, because I would really love the League of Women Voters to be an early enough mover on this that we get some credit for it longer term. I really think we could have a lot of impact on the issue. Okay, thank you.
So I'll just say that I think there are some organizations that have supported lowering the voting age. League, of course, doesn't have a position, but we do support pre-registration, so allowing 16 and 17-year-olds to register to vote. but they can't vote, of course, until 18. But again, I think that this is another situation. I want to say there might be a local league in Minnesota that has supported adding students or younger people of younger ages to vote in like school board elections, because those kind of decisions make a direct impact on them. That doesn't answer your question, right? Or address your comment really, but like, I think that there are some experts out there that you could work to bring together to do like a community forum or a community impact, something along those lines to start to have the conversations about why this is important.
Okay, thank you.
We have a couple of questions in the chat. Kathy, I'm going to do that. Is that okay?
Yes, maybe one of them. I'm only saying because go ahead and see, because we've got to, we're a little bit over, but we'll squeeze them in.
Why don't we take one more, and then maybe this one is I think what they're asking, I think what Judith is asking is how does the League of Women Voters at the national level adapt to like crises and potential tipping points? Is that right, Judith?
If that's the question, I'll say we pivot a lot.
Yeah.
And we've had to pivot a lot in the last couple of years with COVID. We've addressed a lot of, we were hoping that in 2019, 2020, we were in this movement towards adopting some big democracy bills at the national level, and COVID kind of swept the rug out from under us nationally, and as well as many issues for states and local areas across the country. So that's a great example of how we pivoted to make sure that we are putting our meeting basic human needs position to use, and also working to fight for funding for elections, so that state and local election administrators could make sure that they had the funding they need to make all the changes they needed to protect public health and safety during a pandemic. We also didn't see we've been working on it forever, right? But we had to pivot a lot when the For the People Act was first introduced. We were still really working on the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act bill and some other things. And so, we pivot a lot. We have a very flexible staff and are always fighting for the league's positions and priorities. And then I know there's one other question in the chat there, and I'll just address it quickly. I think the Clearinghouse is a great resource for leagues that have published studies related to state and local issues like non-citizen voting or lowering the voting age. I think that's a great place. If you can't find it there, I can post a message on a league leaders list that I have access to, or maybe one of your leaders can do that as well, and see if there's anybody else who has experience with that particular position.
That would be great. And we do have one more hand up. Carrie Costello, if you could unmute yourself and ask it really quickly. We're a little bit over time, but I'll squeeze you in.
Well, it's actually related to this whole issue, because I think Robin's question is really more about how would one begin to get that energy, if you will, focused on the National League to perhaps begin to look at this issue. I know it requires a study and other pieces, but I think that was really more what she was asking, perhaps. I don't want to speak for her, but we've had this discussion in the Boston League and so forth. So I think that was really maybe more of the question: how would a delegate perhaps go into the National Convention, perhaps begin to at least raise the issue at the National Convention, which is the place to bring it. So yeah, that's my comment, thought, etc.
I'm just wondering if people maybe can follow up with Jessica by email for more kind of in-depth discussion on this topic. I'm just concerned about time. What do you think?
And I think that's a good idea. And if someone hasn't asked a question, but you have one you wanted to ask, put it in the chat and we can convey that to Jessica and we can, so you'll get an answer, I think. So I know she will be very responsive. So thank you, Jessica. You know, we really appreciate you coming. We always get questions about what can I do on the federal level? So this has been really helpful. And I really appreciate, you know, your additional resources. And we will be sending some additional ones out ourselves, and we will include yours with those, Jessica. And so if you have anything else like a link to the clearinghouse, that sounded really good, that we could add to ours, that would be helpful. So I appreciate it. And thanks again for coming. And we'd love to have you stay as long as you can, or as long as you'd like. But if you have to leave, that's okay. But anyway, you're welcome to spend the rest of the evening with us. We'd appreciate it too. That would be great.
I'll stay for as long as I can, and I do
Okay.
appreciate you all inviting me tonight and for giving me a platform to talk about our national work. So thanks so much.
Thank you. It's been illuminating, so really appreciate it. So next on our agenda, we will have Jan Muroff, who's going to speak about the LAC, Legislative Action Committee of Massachusetts, and state level action. So Jen.
Oh, great. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Jessica. It's such a pleasure. I can attest that Kristen Kern, the new policy person, is fantastic. She helped me with the ghost guns issue. I wanted to contact ATF about their final rule. So 3 cheers for Kristen and everything you do. So we really appreciate it. So first, I'm Jen Muroff. I'm a legislative specialist. I work on immigration bills and also on gun violence prevention bills. I'm going to share my screen because I just want to go back to the resources that Kathy shared at the beginning. So bear with me for one moment. I'm going to go to our website. So Kathy had talked about impact on issues and also where we stand. So the US positions and the Massachusetts positions. And I wanted to show you where those were on our website. So they're at lwvma.org/advocacy. And again, we'll be providing all these resources to you as a follow-up tomorrow. So you'll have the slides, the recording, and all these active links. So you can see the where we stand and the impact on issues here. So I'm going to stop share for a moment and then go back to my slides. Thank you for your patience. Great. Let me just see if they're not advancing. So I'm going to stop for one moment again. Go back there. Sorry about that. Kathy, can you see my slides or no?
Jen, we can't see your slides.
Okay, thanks. So, okay, let me try this again.
We saw it at the beginning and then it disappeared.
Okay, great. Let's try this. Better now?
Yep, we got it.
Great, awesome, great. So who's the Legislative Action Committee? What do we do? So there are 24 volunteer specialists who drive our advocacy work. So as of right now, we monitor 169 bills in about 20 broad areas of each 2-year legislative session. So we submit written testimony and present oral testimony during committee hearings. We suggest advocacy actions that local leagues and members can take and organize educational events. We're guided by the LWVMA's program priorities set by convention. So just to give you some background on the Massachusetts Legislature, and we do have an amazing program that's on our YouTube channel, which we'll share as well, offered by Beacon Block, Building Leaders of Color, staffers of color at the Massachusetts State House presented this information for us, and we have their recorded program, which we encourage you to watch if you were unable to attend. So as you may know, there's a 2-year term for senators and representatives. We have 200 members, 160 reps, and 40 senators. We're one of 10 full-time legislatures nationwide. Our current formal session ends July 31st of this year, and any actions taken after this date require unanimous consent. And if you can believe it, which is mind-boggling, there are 8,515 bills filed this session alone, in this 2-year session. And the new session will begin in January. So elections in November, and January 2023 is the new session. So where can you find what bills we support? So again, back to our website, we have that advocacy page. You'll see where league supported legislation lives. And as you know, we're in a lot of broad policy areas, but you can find, so let's say, for example, my legislator, Representative Denise Garlick, said, gee, can the league support my bill on healthcare? And I said, actually, we already do, which was great. So the first place I looked was, do we already support the bill? And this is right where, exactly where I went to find out if we support it. So that's a helpful place to start. And then I see if we have positions on things. So how does the LAC select bills that they're following for the session? So first we see if there's a position to support or oppose. So we go to where we stand or impact on issues. We look to see if there's strong support from coalition partners. For example, the Votes Act. So we work with the Election Modernization Coalition in Massachusetts. So we work with Common Cause and just a number, ACLU, a number of partners that are working together on large scale policy issues. Common Start Coalition, things of that nature. In prior sessions, we worked on the ROE Act Coalition, so Reproductive Rights Coalition. We also look to see, what are the chances of it passing this session? We know 8,000 bills filed, like what's actually getting across the finish line? Where can we be effective? And we do want to make sure there are broad policy implications. So LWVMA support carries over to a new session. So for example, we've supported the Safe Communities Act, so immigrants' rights in Massachusetts, for a few sessions now. We don't have to apply for, what am I trying to say here, approval, because we've already supported it in prior sessions. So if we've supported a bill in a previous session, it will be refiled in a new session, and we already support it. So we're covered there. So what's the approval process for local leagues to act on state bills? There is, and I will share this link in the resources as well. So there's a several step process. So does LWV have a position on it? Your local league board will approve whether you can act on it. You would then contact Nancy and Kathy, contact the LAC chairs. You would prepare a legislative research sheet to submit to the LAC. The LAC would vote to support local league efforts. And then the local league would offer oral or written testimony to the joint committee and post it to their website. And then we're always here as resources for you. So at this point, I wanted to share the example. We have Rosemary Shields here tonight from the Cape Cod Area League, and they have worked on some nuclear related bills. So I'm going to stop sharing the slides and I'm going to turn it over to Rosemary.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I'm a huge fan of the LAC, I just want to say. The decommissioning of the Plymouth nuclear station is happening at an accelerated pace, best represented that last November, Holtec Corporation said they planned on dumping 1 million gallons of radioactive water into Cape Cod Bay at the beginning of this year, this quarter, the first quarter. Stunned citizen groups immediately went into action, and I knew that the league had a position on safe disposal of nuclear waste with plenty of citizen input on our League of Women Voter US impact on issues, so which they've had since the 1980s. With this information at hand and with the support of both my local legislative committee, my board, and my local legislative committee headed by Renata Sands, out there to you, Renata Sands, and the Massachusetts Legislative Action Committee, we were able to support H 4444 and S 2791, which fines disposal of nuclear waste, solid or liquid, directly or indirectly, into coastal or inland waters. This was an emergency bill that was actually introduced after, February, when they weren't allowed to do it. But because this is an emergency bill, they did it. And with the League of Women Voters, Massachusetts blessing, we were able to support the bill, testify, and participate in demonstrations on behalf of the residents of Cape Cod Bay and the right whales, whose wildlife sanctuary is in Cape Cod Bay. And you might wonder, oh, and by the way, communication is key. Communication is key with the Massachusetts LAC and with the local leagues. And you might be thinking, what does this have to do with me? Well, if you measure a 50-mile radius around Massachusetts, around Plymouth, Massachusetts, and Vermont, Yankee, and Seabrook, New Hampshire, there are 4 million Massachusetts residents, 4 million out of close to 7 million residents, who are living within a dangerous 50-mile limit of nuclear power plants. Nuclear safety is paramount. So when the Plymouth legislators started sponsoring this legislation, we were able to support it. And if any of your legislators are with the Joint Judicial Committee, let Rosemary Shields know so I can contact you with more information. That's my 2 minutes. Thank you very much. It's back over to you, Jen. Did you want me to say anything else?
Oh, no, that was excellent. And also, I think you worked with Jessica and her team to sign on to a national letter about nuclear waste as well. So you went through that federal action request process because the league has such a strong position.
They have a very strong position. Thank you, LWVUS.
Bravo. Thank you for all your work, Rosemary, trying to keep us all safe too. So now, Kathy, I think we were going to turn it over to Mary to talk about the envoys. Actually, I'm going to share my slides one more time first. See if this will work. Great. Can you see my slides?
Yep.
Great.
Yes.
So how can you take action? So how can your local league take action on state level bills? So one great avenue is to have a member of your local league become an envoy. So for example, I'm one of the envoys. I have a colleague, Janice Soma, who's also a legislative specialist, and we work together as the envoys for LWV of Needham. So we both work together as envoys to work with our state representative and state senators on league priorities. You could take action via the monthly action newsletter. So that comes out the first of the month, and we're updating you on all policy areas and bills that the legislative specialists are working on. That's another avenue. You can respond to our action alerts. They're definitely ramped up at key dates. So for example, when there's the Joint Rule 10 Day in February, when bills have to be reported out of committee, we tend to send a lot of action alerts because we're trying to keep those bills moving and get them down the finish line. You can invite a specialist to speak on a topic. I know a few of us have spoken. I think Lucy and her colleague Nancy Bettinger have talked about criminal justice issues. I've worked with a couple of local leagues on immigration issues. So that's another way to tap into the Legislative Action Committee. And you can also join an issue area email group for updates. So for example, I have an immigration list that I send to. So if I know you're very interested in taking action on specific issues, I can keep you updated on bills and ways to take action. Another way is the Envoy Program. And I'm going to stop share so Mary can talk about that.
Well, you've just about gave the whole story. That's what the
Oh no,
Envoy
sorry
program.
about that. Okay.
No problem at all. We're having trouble getting people to volunteer for this wonderful position. Being an envoy, you, as Jim was saying, you stay up to date on the different issues, on the legislation that we're trying to push. And the idea is for you to establish a relationship with your senator and representative, and to pass that information along, whatever you get from them, to your local league. And you are the one who's the conduit. You're talking to legislators and you're talking to your league, you can also talk to your league about how they can contact the legislators too. And I've just really started during COVID and we have 15 members now, 15 envoys, and we're going to have a meeting, I think the end of May, maybe beginning of June, just to talk about and get an idea of what it is and the big picture of the legislation that we have going and what we need people to do. It's a very busy session and we need as much help as we can get. We need people to be, we need members to be contacting the legislators and asking their friends to contact their legislators about some of these issues. So that's what the Envoy program is. And if your town doesn't have one yet, please get in touch with me and I would love to sign them up.
Thank you, Mary. I appreciate it. Yes, and we have 46 leagues and we love to have at least 46 envoys. And the contact information will be sent out with the program probably in the next couple of days. So thanks, Mary. So the next part of our program, Nancy Brumback is going to speak about local league advocacy. And then at the end of that, we'll take questions on both Jen's session part of the program and Nancy. So now Nancy will
Great.
speak.
I will share the
Thanks,
screen for
Kathy.
her.
You've heard how to do this at the national level and state level, and then we're going to talk about how to take action in your town at the local level. A local league is often going to want to take action on local issues. For example, town meeting warrant articles. It's town meeting season. There's a whole slew of warrant articles out there. Proposed action by your local governments or other issues that come up. We encourage local leagues to decide how they feel about an issue, often by board vote, and then make your voice heard. You probably do not need to do a study before you can act on local issues. Don't be put off by the fact that you haven't done a study on something. The state and national positions are deliberately broad and they can be used. If you're not sure that a state or national position exists to cover an action your league would like to take, please check with the chair of the LAC. We are very familiar with those two position books and we can help you find something if it's there. Just as a couple examples of the kinds of things that you can use. You heard Rosemary talk about the Plymouth and Cape Cod leagues using the nuclear waste disposal positions at the national level to take very local action as well as state action. Springfield was concerned about aggressive policing a while ago, but they didn't see an explicit position on policing. But what we have is positions supporting the constitutional rights of all. Since Springfield felt the police were violating constitutional rights, they could weigh in on the debate using that issue, that position. Recently, excuse me, the Amherst League wanted to support an effort to increase the use of organic products in school lunches and generally improve school lunches, but they didn't see a position on that. But there is a national position on children at risk, and it includes the statement that the league supports policies and programs at all levels of the community and government that promote the well-being, encourage the full development, and ensure the safety of all children. And these include quality health care, including nutrition and prenatal care. So you can use that position to take a stand on school lunches. The Acton area was recently approached to support a caucus on ranked choice voting at the National Convention in June. But since Acton had not done a study on ranked choice voting, it referred the person to the state league because there's a state position on ranked choice voting. Now, it's certainly up to Acton to decide whether or not to participate in such a caucus, but they do not need their own ranked choice voting study to do that. They can take a stand on ranked choice voting based on the state position and on the election systems position adopted by the National Convention in 2020. if a town is considering adopting ranked choice voting for local elections, and that may be coming up for various towns around Massachusetts, a local league can support that if they want to, using the state and federal positions. A local league may want to research and even study the impact of such a move on the town, but they would not have to do that before taking a position. So, when to do a study? You won't always find a relevant position. So local leagues can certainly do studies related to local issues to develop their own positions. As an example, Wellesley just did a study on affordable housing in Wellesley, even though there are state and national positions on affordable housing. I'm going to bring in Ann-Mara Lanza from Wellesley just briefly to tell us why Wellesley did its own study and developed its own position on affordable housing. And the position is here. I don't want you to read it now, but just know that it's there.
Hi, Nancy. Thank you so much. So I'm Ann-Mara. I am from Wellesley, and I'm on the board. And a couple of years ago, actually pre-COVID, several of our members raised the issue of affordable housing. And we decided we needed more education. So we had a panel of experts. And in that panel, we learned that Massachusetts were about 200,000 units short of housing. And we decided we wanted to do something about it. So we started looking at our own positions to see what we had. And our league is a very old league, and we have a lot of very, very old positions. And really only one of our current board members had ever been involved in a local study. So we had this old position from the 70s that we just thought was really not applicable today. Our league is very active in sustainability issues, in diversity issues, and we really thought that we needed a housing study that brought all these issues together. So we did launch a local study, and we really, honestly, we wanted to, we didn't feel like we had the right to remove an old study, an old position from our program without doing this updated study. So that really necessitated the new study. But we also felt that housing is something that, although it's a statewide and actually national challenge, it has to be solved on a local level. And in order to have to have credibility when advocating on a local level, we thought that the study, doing our own study and looking at local issues would really help us. I will say that so the study, we finished the study during COVID last year, and just last week at town meeting, we had the opportunity to use this local position for some new zoning that would enable accessory dwelling units be allowed in Wellesley. We had our board wrote a statement. We thought it was also a great opportunity to explain to people people often don't understand what it means to be nonpartisan versus having positions. So we got up at town meeting and we told them a little bit about the league. We read part of our position and we advocated for the zoning change, which was adopted last week in Wellesley. So
thank you. And another example is my own league, Sudbury, was not able to find any state or national positions that let us support Community Preservation Act warrant articles on historical preservation. We checked to see if Lexington or Concord had such a position because we figured they would, and we could just adopt it by concurrence, but no. So we did a local study on the benefits of historical preservation to the town and developed a local position on that. If you want to develop a position on a specific issue in your town, doing a study is an option, but also look at the websites of other leagues around the state and check out their positions pages. Some of these positions might apply to your needs, like Wellesley's housing position. That might be something that you could glom on to. You can adopt another local league's positions by concurrence vote at your annual meeting without going through a time-consuming study. You can't change their positions to adopt them except to remove specific local references. But there's some really good positions out there. Just as an example, I'm going to show you Needham's position on education. And we're going to go through it. You can't read it now, but it'll be in your packet coming to you tomorrow, but just look at Jen, can you advance the slides? Just look at how comprehensive that is. Maybe you would just like to swipe that. Needham has done the work. No sense we can't use it. And the same thing with Wellesley's housing position. There might be a lot that you want to use there. So even if you decide to do a study instead of a concurrence, looking at positions from other local leagues can give you some ideas and some places to start. The other question we were asked is whether local leagues can work with coalition or joint coalitions, and the answer is yes, but. This document that's on your screen is on the State League website. It's a really good guidance on collaborating with other organizations, whether you're just going to co-sponsor something, whether you're going to do a formal coalition, if you just want to work with them on an event. It has some really good advice on things to do, not do, things to be careful, things to look for. So take a look at that. If you're looking to work with a different organization. And in short, your local league can and should take stands on issues that come up in your town. And the league is likely to already have a position to support you. Ask if you can't find that position. Make your league a force to be reckoned with in your town. Final slide is some resources and contact information to help you get started. You'll get these slides, so you don't need to put them back up, Jen, and they'll be posted on the State League website. And now Kathy is going to start taking questions.
Thanks, Nancy and Jen. Great presentations. Okay, do we have some questions? You can either raise your hand or put your questions into the chat. And again, Lucy and I will monitor that and go back and forth.
We do have a question for Jen. How do you assess likelihood of passage of state bills?
Magic 8 ball. No, I'm just kidding. That's a tough
That's what
one.
I use.
So, exactly. Magic 8 ball. There are a number of factors. If it's a refiled bill, for example, you can see what the status of the bill was from last session. If it advanced favorably out of joint committee and it was put into joint ways and means, it made it as far as it could last session. The likelihood of passage this session could potentially be it could be more successful. So there are a number of factors. We usually see how far it advanced last session, how many co-sponsors it had, what's the buzz in all the daily newsletters we see from State House News and so forth, what's the buzz on Twitter. So it's not very scientific, it's more go with your gut feeling, but it really is based on how far did it advance last session. How, for example, there were a number of gun violence prevention bills that were going to advance, but then COVID hit and the entire legislature had to pivot to, making sure everyone was healthy and safe. We know that with the driver's license bill, it took almost 20 years, but it's so close. So it depends on the topic and which the way the wind is blowing and what the legislature is focusing on. We know they love to focus on obviously the budgets every year and a few key issues. For example, with the Roe Act, we knew that was moving because so many coalition partners were involved and so forth. But maybe Nancy or Kathy, if you have something to add there, then
I just want to remind you that there were 8,500 bills introduced in this session.
Right.
500 bills passed last session, 500. And most of them were things like naming bridges and roads. There are only like 100 so-called substantial bills that pass in a session. So you really have to pick, if you don't want to beat your head against the wall, you have to pick things that you're going to be able to have an impact with. And a lot of that depends on whether there's broad and growing public support for an issue, because that's what will ultimately drive what gets through.
Thank you, Lucy. I have a couple hands up here. I'm going to call on Carrie Costello.
Great.
Two questions. One, speaking of the likelihood of things passing, same-day voter registration, where are we with that? Because it seemed like it was going on a fast track, and then so I'd like a quick update from those in the know, if you will. What's the
Oh,
likelihood?
I'm so in the know on that, you wouldn't believe.
Good.
That, that bill is sitting in conference committee. It is, I would not bet the rent on it in coming out of that with election day registration. We are fighting. We're trying very hard. We've gotten a lot of, what our newest argument is something like over 2,000 provisional ballots were rejected in the last election. If we'd had same day registration, those people could have just solved their problems and registered. But there is some strong opposition to it. In your action newsletter that's coming out next week, you'll see one last chance. Contact your legislators, tell them you care about this. And if it doesn't pass, we'll be right back there next session. They can't avoid this forever.
Well, thank you. And my other question is, and maybe I need to go back in again and look at the state positions. In Boston, we have the issue, of course, we currently have an appointed school committee. That's causing a lot of mishigash, shall we say, going on in the city. Shall we move to elected like we had? And if so, what kind? Or should we have a hybrid of both? And I think we're one of the only ones in the state that have an appointed school committee. But under good governance, we're looking for a position so we don't have to do a study, which ironically we had done about 20 years ago. I led the study and somehow it disappeared from our program. We've traced it back, but we're not even quite sure why. My point is, we don't want to have to do a study. It's becoming a hot issue. It's going to eventually surface. And so I guess I'm wondering from the legislative specialists, where would you point us? I mean, I tried looking under what I'll call good governance. I don't have the package in front of me, but where we might go to be able to.
Carrie, come to us offline and let's
Okay.
see what you need and what we can find.
And see if we can find something without having to do a study. Thank you. Okay.
Lucy. Lucy, do you have another question, or else I have another hand up here?
I just have a question about Day on the Hill. If that's going to come back now that hopefully the State House will still be open for people to go in.
We would anticipate that would be coming back. We do that once every 2 years sessions. Yes.
Yeah, we do it in October October of the even numbered year, right? Right? Or October, the odd numbered year is the time we do it. And that's because that's where the bills are at that point in the legislative session. It makes it most effective. We did it by Zoom last time. Hopefully we can be in the State House this time, or maybe we can do a hybrid so people from the West and the Cape Cod can join us too.
That would be great. Okay, I have a question from Nancy Bettinger with her hand up. Nancy, go ahead.
Thanks. This is more of a comment. I work with Lucy as a legislative specialist for criminal justice, and I can really only speak for myself, but as far as the question of what bills are going to pass, it's really hard to predict anyway, but there are some bills that we know are going to take quite a few sessions to pass because they're difficult. And we take them up anyway because they're important, and it's important to add the league's voice to it. So I just didn't think people at the state level, people shouldn't necessarily get the impression that predicting that a bill is going to pass is the be all and end all for selecting bills. That's all. At the national level, I think it is, but not at the state level.
Thanks, Nancy. I think that's a good point. I know in my league, we had some people very interested in gun safety, and some of those people sort of dropped off, and little did they know that Jen would be telling them, guess what? That bill is coming back to second session and it might actually, the next session, and it might actually pass. So it takes a lot of work from the LAC to push things forward. And it's not just a 2-year process for many bills. So thank you for that comment.
Been working on election day registration for 12 years now.
It's amazing. Thank you, Nancy. Lucy, you got any more
I'm shedding
questions?
tears over Safe Communities Act for sure. 5 years working on that. But look, police reform, you're right, Nancy Bettinger. There was, we got that done, and lending our league name to that was very, very effective in the legislature.
Jen, they're looking for your email in the chat.
Can do.
I'm sorry?
She'll put it in.
Okay.
Happy to do that. Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions? Lucy, do you have any other in the chat? I don't see any on the hands up.
I don't see any. There's some sorry, let me just check. There were some more questions about the Medicaid expansion in the chat that I think probably would go to the national level.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other comments mostly would be helped by when we send out all of the resources and links to everybody. So I think we're good in terms of the chat from what I can see. Hopefully I didn't miss anything.
Great. Well, we will look through the chat, and if there are any questions we see that we didn't answer, we will do that by email or contact the person to follow up. And anything for Jessica, again, we'll forward that to her. So we will be looking carefully through all your comments. So thank you, everybody. This has been really great. I appreciate you coming to learn about how your local league can be active in advocacy at the federal, state, and local levels. And I want to thank our presenters and our very special guest, Jessica Jones Chaparral. Again, a recording will be available on the LWVMA website, and you all will be sent a link to the recording and all the slides from this presentation and any other materials that we've put together from that links that were in the chat. So, and also we're going to be following up with a feedback survey, so please do answer that. So thank you, and we appreciate you coming, and all your input and help is very much appreciated from the LAC, and I'm sure on the federal level too. We do need your help to push these bills forward. So thank you. And we look forward to helping you as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.